there's lots of stories you could tell. My name is George Rendall, and I was involved with St Magnus Festival for, I think it was probably in excess of 20 years. Initially as the sort of local arts representative, and then treasurer, and then chairman, and that was, I took that over from Archie Bevan, the original, more or less the original chairman, and so I was in post for a long sesh. The festival initially was quite a small thing, but they very much under Archie Bevan's influence, decided they needed to make it a more, more representative of the community, bring more people in to what was initially just like a weekend small-scale festival. So that's how I got put on the festival committee. I was treasurer for a number of years, and then Archie decided that he wanted to, because he was still, as I remember, he was still deputy head of the Stromness Academy at the time. It must have been a huge amount of work for him, particularly since the festival was getting bigger and bigger. So he decided that he would stay on as co-artistic director with Sir Peter Maxwell Davies, but that he would shed the chairman role, and he kind of nominated me to take it over. What the festival brought to Orkney and what Orkney brought the festival, I think is absolutely germane to the whole thing. The idea of having local involvement, not just as audience, but as performer and as, stage crew and all that. That was absolutely crucial, but also the involvement between professional and local amateur in various shows and productions and so on. That was what made the festival. It was actually unique at the time. I'm not just saying that because I was involved, but it was what we were told by so many visiting artists and administrators, There weren't that many in Scotland at the time. There's quite a lot of communities, I think, and artists who sort of thought, well, Orkney have managed it, surely we can do something. So there was certainly a certain amount of kind of seeding went on there. I remember, I think it was Theatre Wales came up with a very complicated set. And the way the festival programme was that year, there was always sensitivity between Stromness and Kirkwall. You had to make sure there were things in both, quite rightly, and subsequently throughout the Isles as well. But there was a very complicated set which had to be set up in Stromness and struck and reset in Kirkwall. But it was that way around, or the other way around, but it had to be done in both. And it was a major complicated set. So the festival floor crew basically got the job of doing it. And the Theatre Wales administration said that their professional crew had never been able to do it as quick as our lot did, which I thought was, wow. Well, I guess they knew the space, but they were also extremely motivated. The men in black, as they called themselves, they were, initially at least, largely rugby club people. And they liked to be called the men in black, don't know why. But yeah, they wore black all the time because that was unobtrusive on stage. They would work as long as it took. There was one set of production I did which involved work through the night. You can't pay people to do that. But it was skill as well, I have to say, in case any of them's listening. A favourite of mine, this was the year in which Dorothy Rushbrook this was her last festival. She'd said she was going to retire. And so Max was very fond of her, of Dorothy, and he decided he was going to write a piece to be performed at the kind of closing ceremony on the last night of the festival, a surprise for Dorothy. And what he came with, I remember I met him down at the ferry at the pier. He was just in from Sandy, and he had this kind of surprisingly big envelope, and he proudly put it in my hands and said, "Here's your music." And when I opened it, it was Max's writing wasn't terribly easy to read, and it was quite small, and the pages were big, big pages, and I think there were 10 pages altogether of closely written music and words. And this was to be performed in a few days' time by myself and the guys that I sing with, called the New Boys. And we realised when we started singing it that this is difficult. So we rehearsed like mad, and we were rehearsing in my house, and my house is so central, and it was just across from the festival club, that it was very rare for there not to be a post-festival club gathering, and the house became, we had people to stay as well, and the house was kind of festival central, really. So we're in the middle of this highly secret rehearsal when the door opened, and in walked a friend who'd met up with, I cannot remember his name, but he was a conductor, and he was something Germanic or possibly Belgian. But anyway, his English was really not desperately good. That was by the way. Anyway, he was sat down, wondering in effect why these guys were standing up, poring over this music. So the friend that was with him tried to explain, this is for our administrator, Dorothy, who's retiring at the end of the festival, and it's a secret, so you mustn't tell anybody. And the conductor, wish I could remember his name. Anyway, he looked completely bemused. And eventually one of the New Boys just turned around to him and said, "Nicht blabben." I remember another time, Andy Cant was involved, who's local traditional musician of note, and he was back at the house after the festival club. And that year we had staying with us a girl called Kate Martin. Kate had been extremely, vital really, to the year that Runrig came up, because she had connections far beyond mine, kind of thing. And so Kate was staying with us that year because she'd come up for the festival. And Andy Cant came in and was introduced to Kate, and he said, not the Kate Martin. He said, "You mean the Kate Martin who had Kate Martin's Waltz, was it?" Anyway, a famous piece of music written for her. And she said, "Yeah, that's me." And he dropped to his knee in front of her and said, "Kate Martin's real," which was a sort of musical joke. That kind of thing was delightful, really. I remember a favourite band of ours were called the Humph Family. And, you know, they played in the club. Again, we had the lead singer, songwriter, John Coletta, staying with us. And his sort of second in command in the band was called Willie. Can't remember Willie what. But anyway, I think he was just camping in the sofa or something, and we had a pile of people back after this club, because the Humph family got people worked up, you know, they were excited at the end of it. So back they came, and it was such a delight for me, because we were sitting there in the middle of the floor with guitars, and I was singing parts with the Hump family, and it just felt great, made it all worthwhile. Thinking back to the Art Society days, I mean, it's partly my problem, but there was a definite snobbery involved in it, and it was back in those days, when I was at school, you were expected to speak as near to sort of Queen's English as possible, and any kind of dialect intrusion was frowned upon, and there was that kind of feeling about classical music and so on as well, that it was kind of hermetically sealed from the rest of society. And I, with my involvement in the Art Society, I always felt very constrained. And as I say, probably my problem, but it's the way I felt anyway. But then when I got involved in the festival and like Archie Bevan and I guess the Stromness End, the Rive Gauche of Orkney, I was amazed. Archie was so adamant that there'd be local involvement and we have a local drama. And, to me that was almost like heresy, but this is an arts festival kind of thing. I mean, I shudder, I blush to think of having thought that way, but that's kind of what it taught me, because that mixture of local and visiting became the reason for the festival. And I think that its further development then into MagFest, which was, almost like the festival fringe, and did attract thousands of people. It all became, it was all one for me, the visitors and the local involvement. Definitely an achievement which I think others still struggle to match. The true local involvement.